I want to show you an interesting map that helps frame our central controversy. How did the Roman Empire fall? Now, the map you're about to see on my screen here is absolutely fascinating because it does reflect the complicated nature of Roman society that eventually led to its downfall. Now, you're going to be hear me saying this word a lot, complicated, because the situation is very complicated. I'll try not to berate you with that word, but it is a good word to use. Now, when we're talking about Rome, scholars have put forth dozens of theories as to why the empire fell. The two that I want to focus on today, the two conflicting theories, have to do with the presence of barbarians in the late Roman Empire. So, after the days of Caesar, after the establishment of the Imperium, after the Civil Wars, after Constantine adopts Christianity, you had Germanic, Slavic, often called barbarian tribes. I'm going to use that same word repeatedly. You had those barbarian tribes entering the empire and setting up new kingdoms that were not loyal to the emperor, that were not loyal to Rome, but in some cases used a lot of the same systems or the same even cultural elements that Romans had used. Now, I'm being very careful with my wording because I want to set up the debate as objectively as possible. In one camp, you have scholars like Peter Brown, Oxford educated, genius, well reasoned scholar, who argues that we don't really see invasion as much as we see migration, immigration rather than invasion. Another side of the debate you see with Peter Heather, Adrian Goldsworthy, Brian Ward Perkins, you see invasion. That this was war, this was battle, this was Rome being conquered, taken apart piecemeal, and the empire being forever changed. In this course, you will have to synthesize your own position. Now, what I want to do in this video is show you what made it possible for foreign tribes, whether it was invasion or immigration, to take apart the kingdom. And my thesis is that Rome was already divided. They had a divisive culture. They were divided religiously. They were divided militarily. They were weakened from the inside, and that opened the door wide for external threats. Let's take a brief look at this map. Now, this map is a work in progress. It is not my map. I found it online. It's an excellent resource where you have people on Google trying to chart different archaeological discoveries that show the extent and the legacy of the Imperium of Rome. And that is the key here. We want to see what was Rome's extent. So let me show you a couple of tabs here, and then we'll talk about what it means and how it reveals what led to Rome's downfall. First of all, the provinces. We can see here on the map the modern countries: France, Spain, Tunisia, Morocco, Italia, Greece, Italy, Greece, even the United Kingdom. All of these nations, even in the east, modern day Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, all of this comprised the Roman Empire. These are the borders of the provinces, and this is where we find our first clue. Now, the Roman Empire was not a single ethnic unitary empire where you had one people group dominating the rest with a strong federal government consistently. There were elements of that, certainly. I don't want to take that away if that's what you believe, but quite honestly, the truth is a little bit more, our keyword, complicated. Rome was a multi ethnic empire comprised of many nations and many people and many languages and many religions that were often at each other's throats. They were often hostile to each other. They also often traded with each other. They debated with each other. They often found common ground. They moved around the boundaries of the empire a lot. There was a lot of immigration. One people group, for example, from biblical history is the Jews. When Paul is working to the spread of Christianity in the first century, he finds Jewish bodies in Rome. Outside the Bible, there's primary documents that refer to Jews revolting over the name Christus in 60 AD. So that's a reference to Christ. And you had Jews debating over Christ's messianic nature in 60 AD in Rome. So you had Jewish communities all over the empire. You had Greek communities all over the empire. You had Arab communities all over the empire. There was a lot of migration. There was a lot of movement of people. That does create problems, especially if you're the government. And when we look at these provinces in Rome, you can see some things like France here was brought in by Julius Caesar and his legions. Spain was brought in by Pompey the Great. The remnants of the Carthaginian Empire were finally secured by Scipio Africanus. And of course, Greece was also brought in through various campaigns as well. Egypt was connected to the early days of the Roman Republic. Rome always wanted to connect itself to Egypt and Greece. Egypt, especially because it was a breadbasket of Rome. Greece, especially because it represented significant culture, beautiful art, things the Romans admired. Now, all of that to say, we have a very complicated, very diverse empire. We don't have a single system. We don't have a strong government that is ruling everything effectively or even systematically. A lot of the provinces, some of them are kingdoms or allies or affiliates that we group into the empire because of their relation to Rome, and they're quite independent. Others are directly ruled by the emperor himself. So, like I said, diversity, and we go back to our key word. The state of the Roman Empire at its greatest extent is complicated. Now, here are the provinces. Let's look at the cities and towns. Here you can see a lot of the interaction that I was just talking about. You see all the way from the deserts in Iran and Iraq, all the way up to northern Scotland. You have communities that will identify as Roman settlements, not filled with ethnically Roman people, mind you, but people who identify themselves as being a part of the Roman Empire. Once again, think about the Bible. First century, you had a Jewish Pharisee, a Jewish religious leader from the province of Philistia, or Palestine, as it was called, claimed to be a Roman citizen. Paul of Tarsus, right? He claimed to be a Roman citizen. He was a Roman citizen. He was able to avoid crucifixion because you could not crucify a Roman citizen. So in the book of Acts, he avoided crucifixion. Also in the book of Acts, he was able to appeal to Caesar. Why? Because he was a Roman citizen. Had he ever been to Rome? No. That didn't matter. He was a Roman citizen. He was a part of the empire. Citizenship was one of those common threads. They tried to unite these disparate groups, these various groups, and it worked to mixed effect. Okay, so we have this complication. We have this division. At Rome's height, we can see already why this might lead to civil war, why it might lead to conflict. You can already see the division between East and West. The East over here is a very wealthy region, very, very wealthy region. And it's also kind of far from a lot of the problems that the West has. So there will be an East and West divide that does divide the empire. Now, keep this in mind. Keep these settlement groups in mind as we look at one other factor that gives us a clue about Rome's decline and fall. Check out where they put their armies. Now, if I zoom in here to the United Kingdom, Germania, we will get to you. Look at the United Kingdom, modern UK. They've been tracking a lot of Roman forts, and what we find in the UK is really what's happening all over the empire. Britannia in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth centuries is a very, very diverse place. From Ireland, you have a tribe called the Scoti that keep invading. You have other Irish raiders that keep invading as well. You have the native Celts who are fierce warriors, who are great fighters. You have the Picts in the north. You have the Caledonians in the north. You have even Saxons, Angles, and Jutes coming over the North Sea raiding. So you have all of this going on. You have barbarian invasion. Some groups are not raiding. Some groups are coming in. You have Saxons actually working for the Romans in Londinium, in Camalodunum, and in other places. So you do have a complicated situation in Great Britain, or Britannia as it's called, where the Romans are building lots of forts, where they're interacting with native tribes, they're building communities. What does it mean to be a Roman in Britannia is a complicated question. And it's further made complex by the interactions with the groups that the Romans would label as barbarians. Now, that's going on in Britannia. And you can see the Romans built a lot of their military and they stationed a lot of forts. They kept a lot of forts. They kept them for a long time until the Emperor Honorius said, no more, we can't do this. We got to defend the Central Empire. And he withdrew from Britannia in 410. Okay, now let's move on to, there it is, the border with the rest of Europe. This is a fascinating perspective. All the way from the coast up here down to the Black Sea, close to modern Ukraine, the Roman Empire kept many of their legions and their forts stationed in this central area here. Why do they do that? Because you have groups of barbarians, you have groups of barbarians in this region here that want in. They want past the gates. They want a lot of that wealth that we saw. They want a lot of those resources that we saw. All these communities, all these ports, all these trade centers, it's generating gold and silver and resources that the barbarian tribes just don't have. And they want them. Meanwhile, if we zoom out, let me show you something else that is going on.